Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. Rock and Roll Spot coming at you with the weekly comic book roundup, and we're going to after the X-Men books, we're going to move on to next week's Avengers title, Punisher title, Street Level title, and Cosmic title. So we'll get things started with Captain Marvel number 8. Where we left off with Captain Marvel after at the end of War of the Realms, Carol was potentially not doing well as she coughed up some, what appeared to be, she seemingly coughed up some blood. So, we start off in Maine at Carol's family home. There's a newspaper. There's a newspaper with a front page shot of her helping a Kree soldier out of from a water landing. There's a letter from the Department of the Air Force, and she narrates saying the following: "You think your life can't implode too? Apply the right pressure to the right places, and it will break apart faster than you believe. 6 days. That's all it took for me. It felt even faster. It feels insane to be yearning for simpler times, back when I lived in space and the fate of my entire planet depended on me. And I find I'm angrier than I've been in a long time. I think it's because there's nothing to hit this time. A definite perk of being a superhero is that things present themselves for hitting on a fairly regular basis. I'd like to hit so many things right now. I'd give anything for one of those planet-eating level threats. Hit it right in its stupid face if it had one. The good news is I still haven't had a drink. The bad news is I did buy this bottle." For those unaware, Carol does have a history of alcoholism. In fact, if I remember correctly, Tony Stark helped her get help back when they were on better terms. So we flash back to day one in Manhattan. Some ships that look fairly similar to ones that she fought in the first issue have shown up and are shooting all over the city. And Carol remarks to herself that reminds her a bit of the Brood's organic ships, the Akanti, which are enslaved and hollowed out and then used for spacecraft. And she really hopes that this isn't Brood crap, because she really doesn't want to handle Brood crap this week. And so, a combination of punching and shooting, she takes out one of the ships and notes that her nose is bleeding. Spider-Woman's watching from the side of a building, and Hazmat's also keeping an eye on things, when someone new arrives on the scene. And so Captain Marvel and the newbie fight the remaining two ships. Hazmat manages to keep them away from the civilians, and in fact the city at large crashes into the Hudson. And Spider-Woman grabs a knocked unconscious Carol Danvers from falling, much like she did when they first met back in Avengers Annual number 10. And so Captain Marvel checks out the ship, or one of the ships, and there's a door, which had a Kree soldier inside, who she helps ashore. The new hero introduces herself as being Star, and heads off to take care of something that's happening downtown. Also, Spider-Woman constantly suggests to Carol that she go to Tony's lab and have him run some diagnostics, she, which Carol declines to do. Day 2, the revelation comes up that the truth of Carol Danvers' mother's parentage, that she's a Kree, therefore Carol herself is half Kree. But and you get various talking heads talking about everything, and the fact that Carol's not doing too great. And then she gets a letter from the Air Force. Forcing her dismissal. So, at the family home in Maine, Spider-Woman, not as Spider-Woman, as Carol Danvers' friend Jessica Drew shows up, alongside Maya Lopez, Echo, Jessica Jones, aka Jessica Jones, Monarch Rambeau, aka Spectrum, and Jennifer Takeda, aka Hazmat, all show up. They're at least going to try and make Carol feel better. Turns out that Carol's been forced out of the Air Force, given the option to resign, which she refused, so she's being formally dismissed. And, Carol mentioned she's planning on investigating everything and figuring out what's going on. Though, Jessica kind of mentions that all she really saw was brooding. Well, I mean, brooding in that investigation. Hey, that happens. And, well, Jess does kind of mention that she knows how badly that Carol might want to hit something. And so she brought a present. Hulk. Jennifer Walters' Hulk. So, Captain Marvel and Hulk duke it out. They basically just fight it out for a while. Carol remarked to herself that it felt good to hit something. But she could also confirm to herself that something was very wrong, because she shouldn't be exhausted after a little Hulk sparring. And then she's visited by Dr. Minerva, who basically says, hey, look, the people of Earth don't deserve you. And since you're Kree, I'll back you up. And why don't you come help me save the people that truly need you. There's a backup story, similar to some of the others that have popped up in the last few months. Carol's apartment, her cat's chasing a mouse. The mouse doesn't seem to be doing too well, but goes into the bathroom, and it turns out there's a lot of other mice there too. A lot of mice who seem to be infected with a symbiote. It looks like they're going after Goose. Moving on to the Punisher Annual #1. The, fourth or fifth annual #1 for Frank. So, you may have noticed the Acts of Evil banner on here. So, Acts of Evil is a banner they're putting on much of this year's annuals. The basic idea being that it harkens back to an old well, to another group of annuals from, God, more than 30 years ago. Acts of Vengeance. In Acts of Vengeance, the various Marvel villains got together and said, "Hey, you know what? We end up fighting the same people over and over again. What if we swapped heroes to fight? You know, Magneto could fight Iron Man, and the X-Men could fight the Masters of Evil. I don't know. I actually don't know if the X-Men were even involved, but the idea is basically a villain swap. This time, I can't say for certain as I skipped the Miss Marvel one, which featured her taking on Super Skrull, who I don't really consider to be much of a villain anymore, so much as an anti-hero, or more of a he's complicated. That's the truth. He's complicated. However, this time we've got Frank up against the Brood. All right, so it's the Punisher versus J. Jonah Jameson versus Space, and also versus the Brood Queen. Yeah, oh shit. So we start off at Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center on Merritt Island, Florida. A rocket's about to be launched. It's reminiscent of SpaceX. The Freighter spacecraft, launched by billionaire Kalis Drake. And so, we get a little bit of the crew who are speaking Russian. Jameson sneaks aboard the ship, finds a dead body, and then another dead body about to become dead. Jameson is here because his son John was a consultant on the space program. So, of course, Jameson runs into the Punisher killing people, and it turns out that people he's killing are not the astronauts they're said to be. But the ship launches. Frank kills another one of the not astronauts. And Jameson, of course, has the usual, you're crazy, all those stories, you only took out criminals, but you knew you had to be. And so Frank kind of says, hey, why would astronauts have guns on board? Which actually brings us to probably one of the best moments in the entire book. Jameson is saying, I don't know, the moon's haunted? My son went to space and came back a damn werewolf. Which is true. So Jameson and Punisher talk to Drake, right? And then they also put on spacesuits. And they basically go where the shuttle's taking them. And we find out also that Jameson enjoys playing flight simulators, so, But they're in, I wouldn't necessarily say deep space, but there are space sharks and, well, space whale or rather, shall we say, an Akanti. So the Brood begin to make their way aboard the ship because, well, they're the Brood. Punisher shoots his way through them, but they do manage to capture Jameson. The Brood Queen, well, she was promised hosts. She was promised mates. Jameson and Punisher rescues Jameson, and the two of them kill off the brood who are still around. They crash the space whale, or the Aconti, off Florida's southern coast, and go their separate ways. There is also an epilogue. Turns out that Jameson made arrangements for an interview with Drake. And so they talk about how, one, somehow all of the astronauts aboard were Russians, Russian separatists. And funny how he also brings up the fact that from the looks of things, it seems that Drake is somehow knew of the Brood. And of course, though, Punisher shows up and ends the interview his own way. And that's where the Punisher versus J. Jonah Jameson versus Space versus the Brood Queen comes to its end. But yes, it's hinted throughout the issue. There are hints made throughout the issue that Drake was in cahoots with the Brood Queen all along, and that's how he managed to get basically get his tech. Moving on to Silver Surfer Black, number 2. Where we left off here, the Silver Surfer found himself on the world inhabited by Null, the symbiote god. So we get more flashbacks to, primarily to Silver Surfer's time as a Herald of Galactus. And this flashback in particular explains that this is not the first time that the Silver Surfer and Null have crossed paths. And it turns out that the symbiotes fear the Surfer because he made their god bleed. So now we get the two of them Surfer's trying to run while Null is trying to send a symbiote to possess him. Which it briefly does. However, someone destroys the symbiote, or at least manages to free the Surfer of the symbiote. And so the Surfer escapes from Null. And of course, Null gives chase on a dragon a cat dragon thing. which the surfer must attack from the inside out. But surfer follows the voice that's guiding him. And it turns out to be Ego, the living planet, who makes an offer to Surfer, saying, hey, shall we kill a god? That is where the issue comes to its close. That is it for this part of the comic book roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be informed when I put up new content. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, PayPal are in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.